Whenever I've taught students something about the ideas of Sigmund Freud, I'm always keen to ask them what they think. And often I get responses like, "He's just weird, sir."
You're really weird.
But rather than dismiss the theory with such dramatic and sometimes comical statements, the challenge is for you to use your psychological knowledge to critically analyse and explain your objections, to do more than just say, "Freud was mad, sir. He was on cocaine." Hey everyone, welcome back to Bear It in Mind. My name's Tom and I'm a teacher of psychology, and on this channel we explore the world of psychology so that we can better understand ourselves and others. In this video we're going to cover ways to evaluate the psychodynamic approach in psychology. We've covered the ideas of Sigmund Freud and the psychodynamic approach in a previous video, so do check that out if you haven't already done so before watching this video. Let's dive in. One area of evaluation relates to the extent to which the approaches can be practically applied to real-world situations. In the case of the psychodynamic approach, one strength is its practical application to therapy. This is because from Freud's case studies, he developed a theory to try to help people who were suffering from certain disorders. And remember, for Freud, what was behind many forms of mental illness were traumatic experiences that people had in the past, which had been forced into their unconscious mind. He called this therapy psychoanalysis, which became known as his talking therapy. This was because patients would lie down on his couch with Freud positioned out of sight behind them, and patients were encouraged to talk without restraint, to say whatever it was that came into their mind without holding any of it back.
I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that.
What he called free association. Freud believed that this free association would bring to light some of the conflicts going on in the unconscious mind. What the patient said, of course, would often be considered symbolic and have hidden meanings, which would require analysis and interpretation by Freud himself. Sometimes this would involve dream analysis. Freud would listen to patients' descriptions of their dreams and analyse their deeper desires and wishes in order to gain insight into what was going on in their unconscious mind. For example, perhaps a patient had lost a parent when they were very young, but never really processed that experience, never really grieved and experienced that loss, so had never come to terms with it. It was simply repressed. Once these unconscious conflicts were brought to light through Freud's therapy, patients experienced what Freud termed catharsis, which is the process of releasing strong or repressed emotions, which as a result provides relief. Therefore, it could be argued that the psychodynamic approach has made a significant contribution to our understanding of human behaviour, because psychoanalysis not only attempted to help people with mental disorders in Freud's day, but in doing so made a significant contribution towards psychotherapy in modern-day psychiatry. Another way the psychodynamic approach has been praised is in terms of how Freud's ideas laid the foundations for future theories. This is because some of Freud's ideas have had a lasting impact that have shaped various theories of human behaviour. One area that Freud can be particularly praised for is the focus he placed on our early childhood experiences, and in particular the significant role that our relationships with our parents can have in influencing and shaping who we become and how we behave in the future. One example of this can be seen in the work of psychologist John Bowlby, who you will come across in the attachment topic. Bowlby was heavily influenced by Freud's ideas, and he developed a theory around the importance of the child's attachment to their parents. According to his theory, children who are deprived of a continuous, loving relationship with their mother in the first 2 years of life will suffer lasting consequences in later life in areas such as their intellect, relationships with others, and even criminal behaviour. Therefore, whilst Freud's ideas have certainly been questioned, it could be argued that his theory should be recognised for the impact it has had in influencing many modern theories of human behaviour. The supporting evidence for the psychodynamic approach is mainly based around case studies. Case studies are an in-depth analysis of an individual or a small group of people. One of the most famous case studies involved a 5-year-old boy referred to as Little Hans. I'm just going to paraphrase the story of Little Hans for the benefit of what you'll need for an exam, but there are more weird details and specifics in relation to his story that I won't cover here. I'll leave you to go looking for them if you're really interested. In essence, the case study of Little Hans was used by Freud as evidence for the Oedipus complex. Little Hans was a 5-year-old boy who had a fear of horses after witnessing a horse collapse outside his home. Little Hans's father was quite the fan of Freud and so sought his help to treat his son's fear. Freud's direct involvement with little Hans was rather limited. He only met him twice, with the majority of the information and insight coming from chats with little Hans's father. His parents reported a range of behaviours and incidents from his life. For example, they reported that from the age of 3, little Hans was very much interested in what they called his whittler, with his mother threatening to take him to the doctor to have it cut off, to castrate him if he didn't stop playing with it. As a result, according to the psychodynamic theory, the pleasure little Hans was gaining from his whittler would now be repressed because of this fear of castration. At around the same time, little Hans saw a horse collapse and die outside his home, which caused him a great deal of anxiety. At around the age of 4, Hans went on to develop a fear of horses, and specifically of a white horse that would bite him. At this point, Hans's father also reported that Hans commented on the size of the whittler that a horse had in comparison to his own. His fear developed to the point where he often did not want to leave his home. As this phobia was developing, a conflict with his father developed. Little Hans used to climb into bed in the morning to cuddle his mother, which little Hans's father opposed. By the age of 5, his phobia of horses had reduced, but focused on white horses, and specifically those that wore blinkers and a noseband. Little Hans's phobia appeared to end after some dreams and fantasies. One of these fantasies involved little Hans having a number of children, of which his own mother was the mummy, and with little Hans's father becoming the granddaddy. What was Freud's interpretation of all this? Freud interpreted little Hans's fear of the horse as symbolic of his fear for his father, something he had repressed. The white horse with blinkers and noseband was something Freud interpreted as symbolic of Hans's father, who had pale skin, wore glasses, and had a moustache. Furthermore, Freud interpreted little Hans's fear of horses as fear of being castrated. Finally, little Hans's dreams and fantasies were interpreted to represent how the conflict that little Hans was experiencing with his father, because he desired his mother, was resolved through Hans replacing his father in the fantasy and eventually identifying with his father and becoming like him. It won't come as a surprise to know that the evidence for Freud's theories and the research methods he used have come in for a lot of criticism. Firstly, one of the problems with Freud's evidence is that it's based on case studies. This is a problem because using an idiographic approach which focuses on in-depth studies of individuals, particularly those with unusual cases, means that the findings from that research are very difficult to generalise to other people. As such, case study research is limited in its ability to make universal laws about human behaviour. Secondly, and perhaps most strongly, Freud's evidence is criticised for being unscientific. This is because his investigations are highly subjective, which means they are based on his personal interpretation and opinion of what is going on in a person's unconscious mind, something we cannot objectively check. Furthermore, one of the key features of the scientific process is what Karl Popper referred to as falsifiability. This is the idea that in order for a theory to be scientific, it has to have the possibility of being shown to be false or being shown to be incorrect. Science doesn't go around trying to simply find evidence for theories, but to try to find evidence that disproves the theories. For example, Karl Popper used the now famous example of swans. If your theory is that all swans are white, you don't go around looking for white swans to confirm or prove your theory. Instead, you go around looking for swans that are grey or black to try and disprove it. The psychodynamic approach is argued to be unfalsifiable. There is no way to falsify and disprove his theories. This contrasts with the highly scientific methodology of the behaviourist approach with the objective, falsifiable research of B.F. Skinner, and the biological approach's investigation of the human brain through brain scanning technology. Therefore, taking all of these points together, it could be argued that the psychodynamic approach's explanation of human behaviour is severely questionable, particularly in contrast to other approaches because of the poor quality of the evidence. Next, let's consider how we can use the debates to discuss the psychodynamic approach. One of the ways the psychodynamic approach has been criticised is because it is deterministic. This is because it states that all behaviour is caused by unconscious forces, and as a result, this means that we have no free will to choose our behaviour. It's outside of our control. Freud, in fact, argued that free will is an illusion, by which he meant that we think we are making free choices, but actually we are unaware of all the unconscious forces that are driving and influencing the way we behave. For example, the way that repressed memories may be related to struggles with anxiety or certain mental disorders. Some have argued that this is a problem because it removes responsibility and accountability for people's actions. This is because if their behaviour is caused by some internal factor that is outside of their control, then this means it's not down to them and their choices. It's because of their unconscious forces that they are unaware of. Therefore, it could be argued that the psychodynamic approach is rather limited in this regard because of its deterministic view of behaviour. Finally, one of the ways that the psychodynamic approach can be evaluated is through comparing it with the humanistic approach. For example, the psychodynamic approach can be criticised for being pessimistic. This is because its view of human behaviour is rather negative. For example, firstly, it focuses on what has gone wrong during the psychosexual stages of development, and specifically how any fixation at one of the stages has led to negative consequences as an adult. Secondly, Freud describes the human personality as in conflict. And thirdly, all of this is being driven by unconscious forces that determine our behaviour, which means we lack any choice. This contrasts with the humanistic approach, who offer a much more optimistic view as they focus on personal growth. Maslow was particularly interested in motivation and how people can achieve their full potential. Additionally, the humanistic approach puts a large emphasis on the role of free will with our ability to be active and make choices to improve ourselves. Therefore, the psychodynamic approach could be argued to be rather limited because of its overly negative view of human behaviour. So now that you hopefully understand something of the strengths and limitations of the psychodynamic approach, bear in mind how you can order and structure your discussion about the approach in an essay. Notice how we've used a variety of evaluation points that have included supporting evidence, debates, as well as comparisons to use our wider understanding of psychology to evaluate this approach. For more on the other approaches in psychology, check out the links to the playlist in the description below. I hope you found this video helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.